Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
The information contained within this podcast does not consider your personal circumstances and is of a general nature only. You should not act on it without first obtaining professional financial advice specific to your circumstances.
Paul Atherton is an ex-Wall Street advisor on a mission to help young people win back their financial power, wealth and security. He does this by helping them understand the hidden world of finance, risk and investments, helps them figure out how it impacts them, and to seize the opportunities to make it work to their advantage. This is Paul Street Journal. I'm here this morning with Paul Atherton. How are you, Paul?
I'm really well, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. I am looking at the global landscape at the moment, and sometimes it seems on the news that Trump often has little tantrums, and I'm not sure that I know they're justified or not, but perhaps you have a different perspective.
Well, I guess it depends which area you're looking at, but if we were looking at some of the latest forays he's had, he's been focusing on trade and claiming that the United States has had a raw deal and he wants to redo the deals. To be honest, he's actually right. Like, the United States has been at the wrong end of the deal of this. But he's wrong in the terms of the way he's approaching it. So it's, I guess, typical Trumparian approach. So he's kind of right on one side and wrong on the other. But to sort of unpack that, you need to get a little bit into a bit of balance of payments. So a little bit technical talk, but I'll try and keep it as less technical as possible and as plain speak as possible. So let's just go to, imagine you're listening to the evening news and people talk about the balance of payments. Well, actually, the evening news usually talks about the trade deficit or the current account deficit. Gosh, we're in a deficit, and that feels almost exactly like saying we're in debt. Because if we think about from our own household perspective, if you keep spending and buying stuff you can't afford, you go into debt, and that's a bad thing. That's clearly a very bad thing. And as a country, if you keep buying and importing products that you can't afford, you go into deficit. I say can't afford, but it's a little different when it comes to a country, and there are a number of reasons for that. So when you go into deficit, yes, you've bought, there's more imported goods than you've exported, right? I think that by definition is the trade account of the current account, but let's just keep that as roughly equivalent. But in terms of the balance of payments, there's two sides to this. There is the current account and there's the capital account. Now, traditionally, so if you look back 100 years ago when we were first manufacturing cars, we imported a widget and then we balanced that payment. So the widget that we bought in from country X would then show in our current account as a deficit because we bought it, but it would then be paid via the various banks, through the capital account, and that would go in as a positive. Okay, so you now got a current account and a capital account that match equally, and they have to equal together. One up, one down equals zero. That's by definition. So then that's not even argued anywhere. This is not an ideological argument. It's not a theoretical argument. I used to tell people it's like gravity. You might not like it, but you got to live with it. So traditionally, the capital account just settled the current account. The trading was settled through the capital account or where the money was settled. Now, fast forward to today, and probably for the last 40 or 50 years, that's not the way it's worked at all. And very few economists get this, and I think partly because of the way they're trained. And I was lucky enough to, I guess, cut my teeth on an emerging markets desk where you really get a feeling for how it really works. And the way it really works is through the capital account. And what countries do is they put lots and lots of money into the capital account, and the current account must adjust.
So I don't quite understand. What is the capital account?
Okay, so just stepping back, the capital account is part of the balance of payments. And the good news is in terms of equations, it's quite simple. So the balance of payments must net to zero, and the balance of payments is really about how a country interacts with the rest of the world, and it has to balance. So there's two parts to it. The one is the current account, and the next is the capital account. And you can look at the current account as things, as stuff. So if it's Australia, it might be iron ore that we sell to China. If it is maybe Japan, it might be Toyota cars or laptops from China. I don't know. So it's stuff.
Yes, it's not quite liquid money. It's the monetary value
cash.
of items.
Now, the capital account, that's cash. That's money. And usually, and certainly traditionally, when I say usually, traditionally, like 100 years ago, that capital account was what settled the current account. So you traded for a widget and you settled those payments in the capital account. And so one drove the other. That is, the current account drove the capital account. And the capital account was really there to just net payments. So you balance to zero. That kind of makes sense, right? So you buy a product and you settle in cash in your capital account, and it has to net to zero. So China has a very, very large capital account surplus that they place into the United States. And the current account, the trade account, if you will, must adjust. It must adjust and must go into surplus. So for every dollar they place into the United States, they quote unquote invest, the trade account or the current account must go down by that same dollar, just by definition. It has to, and it does. It all adds up, and it's not by accident. So the question is what's the chain of causality? And I usually have this conversation with economists, and they immediately just say, well, of course it's the other way. And I'm like, well, no, it isn't. And first of all, it doesn't say anywhere in the equation that there needs to be a chain of causality. But in today's day and age, we trade more in intangible goods, what like Google and Apple and iTunes. We're no longer trading in widgets, but the free flow of capital is extraordinary. I mean, you and I as individuals, Tim, can place money into the capital account in the United States. Can you imagine that? Like 100 years ago, it just wasn't going to happen. And so that's the way the flow works. Now, let's go back to Trump. So what's he doing? There's a massive, massive deficit that the United States has. So what that means is they're soaking up the world's demand. And surplus countries are pushing that demand onto the United States. So they're more or less saying, you buy our products. And they're doing that via the capital account. Now, what Trump is doing is saying he's focusing on the current account or the trade account, saying, let's do a better deal. Let's put a tariff on the imported goods. Well, you shouldn't do that at all. He should just put it on the importing of money. And that would be far more efficient, costless, wouldn't even get into the people's news. Nobody would be bothered by it, and it would actually be effective. So what is he doing? He's doing the current account. He's putting trade impositions on China. The cost of goods are going up. There's a trade war. Now, ironically, this is going to lead to probably the opposite effect. Why? Because the Chinese are worried about this, right? And the people that have got a lot of money, what do they do? What are they worried about? They're worried about their money. So they tend to push it, guess where? To the United States. So the money now is flowing, and this is exactly what's happening. So if you look at the capital accounts and capital flight, they call this out of China, it's massive. Like, it's just really increased. And I think a large part of that is because of the trade fight that's going on. So the vested interests, the people with a lot of the money get very worried, and they start flowing the money. So in fact, this whole effort probably will backfire and make the current account, or the trade account, which is he attacking, even worse.
Right, so it's causing a lack of confidence.
Lack of confidence, well, the Chinese are very nervous. And those with money to flow, again, every dollar that goes into the United States must have an equal dollar down or an equal dollar in the deficit. And that's by definition. So, and Chinese money will be coming over in millions and millions. And Australia, by the way, has the same problem.
So we are doing the same, so they're doing the same thing to Australia?
We have the same problem. And the thing is Australia, because we're so small, it doesn't take many Chinese. Now, if you look at what's the largest amount of migrating citizens with the largest amount of money, it's the Chinese. So the same problem happened to Germany with Greece. So Yanis Varoufakis, fabulous guy, very good finance minister, ex-finance minister, one of the few economists that I listen to and respect. He said very, very clearly he does not want Germany's money, he doesn't want Chinese money, he doesn't want the money. So Greece is very, very poor, and they go, well, of course you want the money. He said, no, and he was correct. He wants their investment. That's different. So if you invest the money, you're putting it to productive work, but you're not just the money, because money will force a deficit.
Interesting. All right, well, thank you for talking with us today, Paul. It's been fascinating.
Great stuff. Thanks, Tim.
Paul Street Journal.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.